Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and we are live in the Hy-Vee Club Room with all of you great people. That's terrific. I like it that this audience seems to be a lot brighter than some of the audiences that we have. So keep it up, and maybe you'll get a reward at the end of the show, such maybe a scone, for example. Possibly, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. 60 minutes of delicious radio getting ready to come your way. We're starting off the hour with Emily Rose Shaw, our health coach. She is... Are you always healthy? Were you always healthy?
I was not always healthy, but I love being healthy now. It's fantastic.
Okay. So, as long as you can eat really well and and be healthy, I'm in on that program.
Yeah, I eat a lot, but I eat a lot of healthy foods, and I won't eat something that's not delicious to me, you know.
I want to tell you what I made the other day. I think you'll be proud of me, actually. Besides, I did make a smoothie yesterday because for some reason it just got so warm yesterday and today too that I had to have a fresh fruit smoothie. But actually what I made was, there was a woman at the farmer's market. She was selling fresh oyster mushrooms that she is cultivating now, and she'd been promising them for weeks and finally delivered. And so I went home and I sauteed up a little bit with a little bit of garlic, and that was really good. But then what I did was I took them and I sauteed them in garlic, cut them into pieces, sauteed them into garlic, and I put them into a blender, into an Omega blender. You're always, I'm using my Vitamix. I put them into my Omega blender with breadcrumbs, all right? Breadcrumbs, olive oil, garlic, cheddar cheese, and chard.
Good.
Did I get a star?
Especially for that chard, yes, you do.
All right.
A couple stars.
Thank you. So, and then I blended it up to a nice consistency, made these patties, and cooked them up. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was so delicious, and had green in it, and wonderful. So simple, easy to do. I think it's something great, especially like somebody who's a vegetarian. It could give them a really nice alternative, if they're missing meat, for example, because it has a really great texture to it, and it's certainly, mushrooms are so umami-ish, and so it really gives you a good feeling of eating them, and they're not inexpensive. I figured it cost me about $2.50 for each burger.
Yeah, plus mushrooms they're a superfood. I mean, they have a lot of anti-cancer. Remember we did that whole show on mushrooms.
We did, and that must be why I'm feeling so great. Okay, so anyway, moving into special questions and answer Healthy Bites series for the next few weeks, right? That's what we're going to do. And you can actually submit questions to Emily. Anybody who's in the listening audience can do that. They can send her questions, Emily at EmilyRoseShaw.com, or you can send questions to Great Taste at KRUUFM.com, or you can stop one of us on the street and say, hey, I have a question. And anything, studio audience, anybody can do it. And we'll compile these questions, and then we'll answer a few of them over the next few months. To just, you may have a question. If it's urgent, better let us know, because it might take a while. Anyway, this week's question comes from me.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Isn't that something? I had a little special priority. What can I say? Now that the weather has turned cold, I don't feel like drinking smoothies at all, except yesterday. I crave warm or hot things, and that is absolutely true. Boy, that seems only natural, as internal heat is a good thing in the winter. This guy who did this is bright. So what can we do to build up internal heat? What foods to eat, beverages to drink? I think this is to me is a really critical question, because I'm so cold, when the weather gets really damp and everything, and I just feel like I need something to keep myself warm and feeling good.
Yeah, so this is a really great question. It's actually one of the frequently asked questions that I get from so many of you guys, which is how can I continue to enjoy my smoothies and things that I'm used to that are really healthy no matter what time of year it is. But just for the record, I do think that eating seasonally is a really good idea because foods like root vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, organic lean meats do have warming properties. And that's because these healthy foods are rich in complex carbohydrates, in protein and fat. They actually take a little more work for our body to digest, and that in turn increases our body temperature. But the thing is, we also don't want to feel sluggish like many of us might have felt after Thanksgiving. So I want to reveal one of the secrets that's allowed me to stay at my ideal weight year round, and that's eating both some cooked foods and some raw foods, even in the wintertime. So including some raw foods that are in the right amount for your body, everyone's a little bit different, can really help us to have more energy, stay at our ideal weight, and stay hydrated during the dry winter season.
Okay, so that was a little secret. Now, do you have some specific tips that you use to stay warm with raw and cooked foods?
I do. I have 5. The first one addresses your question with the smoothies, and I say green smoothies, but it doesn't. It could be a fruit smoothie that you love to have. So I usually add some healthy fat to it in the winter time. So like flax or chia or hemp seeds, avocado, almonds, coconut. All these things are going to add a little bit of it takes our body to a longer time to digest the fat, and that increases our body temperature. So it also just feels a little more, it's more grounding. I think it's a good thing to add to your smoothies. And then I always add some spice, so like an inch of ginger root or some cinnamon. That's really going to create that nice fire inside. And then I also wait until the smoothie is room temperature, or I even let it go a little bit longer in the blender so it's slightly warm, and it actually tastes really good, and it's really pretty nourishing. And again, I'm using seasonal fruits a lot, so pears and citrus fruits is what I'm using. I'm not using a lot of frozen fruit in my smoothies in the wintertime, so I'm starting off with fruit that I keep on the countertop that's room temperature.
That's really a great tip because, of course, I was just pulling out the summer fruits that I'd frozen. The blueberries, the strawberries, the peaches. It was so nice to look at them and because they're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, but that's a really great tip. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And then number 2 is soup. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Eating cooked soup is very common. Miso soup, lentil soup, very nourishing. But you can also make a raw soup that takes not much time at all. Just putting a bunch of fresh vegetables in your blender and giving it a whirl, and then you can actually put it on your stovetop in a little saucepan and stick your finger in until it's warm enough to your liking. We don't eat soup when it's boiling hot anyways. When you're cooking it on the stove, you're going to wait till it cools off a little bit.
You didn't know Stanley Schwartz?
I didn't.
No.
I don't.
No. Stanley was one of my sales reps, and we went with him to numerous restaurants over the years, and he'd always tell the waiter, I want my soup hot. So the classic scene I remember is, sorry to digress, but Stanley's no longer with us, and I wanted to just kind of reminisce a little bit about him. So the classic scene was at this restaurant called Peppolino in New York, really great place run by 2 Florentine guys. And they brought the soup out, and the steam was just pouring off this soup, right? He puts his spoon in it, he puts it to his mouth, and he tells the waiter, he said, it's not hot enough. I was just totally astounded. Like, what? How can it get any hotter? Yeah. Anyway, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If you want to taste your soup, I recommend having it cool down a little bit.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of those raw soups from the recipe blogs, that show we did a couple weeks ago. So if you've signed up to get updates, I sent that out, and there's a lot of great soups you can just make in 10 minutes. Then you can just warm it up on the stove with your finger, and then you're retaining all of that hydration from the vegetables and everything, and all the enzymes. So it's really great. The number 3 is raw fusion. So what's raw fusion? Raw fusion is a combination of something that's cooked and a raw element to it. So that works really well with having some salads. So I've been craving kale salads. I love kale. It's a heartier green. I also love Indian spices and Indian food. So I've been making these Indian inspired kale salads, I've been taking avocado and massaging the kale and then adding.
Hey, hold on one
yeah.
second. I just want to make sure that your choice of words is exactly correct. You've been massaging the kale.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you take the kale leaf and you massage it with your hands.
Yes.
Okay.
Kids love it. I highly recommend it. And adults. It's wonderful. It's fun. It's like getting really in touch with your food. And you do that because kale can be coarse, so you want to make sure to really cover every part of it. So avocado, and then I'll steam some sweet potato and some green peas, and then I like to put on Dr. Erin Anders' spice mix.
Betty's brain.
Yeah.
Something or something.
It's fabulous. It's so good. It's just one spice mix. You put it on there, or you could use curry powder, and it's fabulous. You have your cooked element and your raw element that provides volume to keep you full and satisfied.
And you've gotten a little exercise by massaging the kale.
And you worked out your hands, yeah, your wrists. So that is number 3. Number 4 is basically just warming spices. You can add it to anything that's savory or sweet. So ginger, cayenne, peppercorn, cinnamon, horseradish, jalapeno, peppers, garlic, turmeric. However, I will caution with really hot peppers, because it's happened to me one time with my cousin. He made me eat the hottest pepper in the world. I don't remember what it was. I was visiting him in San Diego, and I had it, and I just, you start to sweat because it's so hot. And then that in turn cools you off. So you want to, maybe not the hottest peppers, but some of the other ones, jalapeno, really great for that fire. And then the last one, number 5, is drinking warming beverages. So you talked about, what beverage can I drink that's really going to be really warming. So the most warming beverage I can think of is hot water with half a lemon's juice, ginger, honey, and cayenne. And that will really give you a kick. And also with the ginger and the lemon, that's really good in the wintertime for our immune system. Lemons have a lot of vitamin C, and the ginger, antibacterial, antimicrobial, all those properties. So that's a really good drink to have to boost your internal heat. And then also I have a couple bonus tips, because it's not just about food, but it's also important to consider having a strong metabolism. That's really important. So you can think of your metabolism as your internal fire. So eating foods that have a lot of fiber and protein, and working out, putting on more muscle, making sure you're getting enough sleep at night, those are all great things to help with your metabolism. And then the second one is to do exercises that get your circulation going, your blood moving. So I notice that when I exercise, especially first thing in the morning, I'm less cold throughout the entire day. So I recommend hot yoga, which is really great. Any cardio really that's going to get your blood moving. Also doing a Abhyanga, Ayurvedic Indian massage, really great to.
That's different than kale massage.
Different, yeah, a little bit different. That's good to contain your body heat, and so you could use a combination of those, and I guarantee you'll be a little warmer this winter.
That's great. I'm really excited about some of these things, and definitely plan on integrating them into my winter lifestyle. So for tips on how to find your health style that's right for your body, sign up for updates at www.emilyroseshaw.com. And we're going to be talking about other things come the first of the year, because after all the month of December, or at the end of November, the month of December, everybody needs to think maybe that it might be time to have a little bit of cleansing, we might say.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be launching a gentle detox kind of reset after the holidays in mid-January. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more details. It's going to be 100% online, although there might be some component with Open Space Studio here in Fairfield. So you can do the exercise, you can eat really cleanly, and reset for the year ahead. So stay tuned for that.
All right, our health coach, EmilyRoseShaw.com. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so if we've had enough time to be healthy, sorry, we've got a lot more to talk about that has to do with health, because we have an amazing local food project that's going on here. And Jan Swinton, who is our local hometown harvest coordinator, she is here. Yes, that's right. You should. Jan, come on up and let's talk about what's happening, because there was a big article in the paper. The greenhouse is going up. This is all involves a project that Jan received a USDA grant for $100,000 and more money from other companies, from private firms, to actually get a greenhouse project going in Fairfield that's going to create fresh food for school lunch programs.
Right. It's a farm-to-school program, and it is almost done. We finally got the plastic put on the greenhouse, and it's standing over there. It's in a very industrial area. Everyone I've spoken to said, "Where is that?" They can't find it because it's kind of behind some of the industrial stuff out in that area. So that's okay. We're trying to stay safe back there, working on it, and having an awful lot of visitors during the work time is not necessarily helpful. So, but we're almost done now. We got the plastic on, and we finally sealed up all the doors today. It's supposed to get cold tomorrow, so I'm really grateful to have it this far along.
And the seeds will start to go in?
December 11th, we have a huge bunch of kids coming from the school, and I think that they're going to make rows and put seeds. Yeah. December 11th, just another few days here.
And what's the first batch of veggies that are going to be grown?
We're going to do some cold season stuff, spinach, and we'll put some radishes in because they come up and go down real fast. So, and then a lot of spring salad greens. Spring. I said spring. It's December. But spring greens go really well in the wintertime. And we'll put in some kale and a few things like that. But this is for the public school kids. And so their favorite vegetable is cherry tomatoes. And really hard to grow those right now.
I don't think that's a vegetable.
Yeah, well,
it's like ketchup
right,
isn't a vegetable either.
Yeah, so, but it's been a really incredible project. And like you said, it started with the USDA grant a whole year ago. And we've been working all year toward this project and finally found the right location and finally found additional funding. Alliant Energy was a big part of the funding for the heating system, and that's one of the really amazing parts of the project. It's all free heat. It's waste heat from a manufacturing plant. The heat that's going out in their smokestack right now is 180 degrees, about 12 hours a day. And so we're harvesting a bunch of that heat and putting it underground in a huge, great big water tank. And then from the water tank, it'll go into the soil, and that is actually our heat sink. We've insulated down about 6 feet below the greenhouse all the way around. And so we'll be warming the soil and warming water in the tank. And we've got earth tubes clear at the bottom of that heat sink. And so we'll be moving some air through there, so that will be cooling in the summertime, and it's about 53 degrees down there all the time.
And this isn't just a project for kids to have healthier food in their meals, but it's actually an educational project also, right?
It is. There's a huge research aspect to it. In Colorado, they've been doing the earth tube systems underground for a while. They often put in 3 layers, 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet down, and they can turn on 1 or 2 or 3 of those layers. But in Colorado, their soil is rock. It's granite, and we've got clay. So it's a really different thing. Once we started digging out there, this is the old Iowa malleable iron plant backyard, and there was a lot of coal slag in the ground. There was a lot of foundry sand in the ground, and there was a lot of chunks of steel and icky stuff. So as we dug out that hole to put the air tube system in, we removed all the garbage, but we put back, it was a lot of sand, a lot of foundry sand. And then we put in 30 truckloads of 12 tons each of certified organic soil. So the top 4 feet, and in kind of a heap, is certified organic soil from Dan Walker's place out, what's it called, Cypress Village. And it's beautiful, really easy to work with. As soon as we got it in, it rained for 2 days, so that 2 inches of water it was a mud fest out there for about 24 hours, but then it froze. And so it's been easy to work with and easy to walk on, and now we got it covered, and it was all thawing out today, and it was kind of spongy in there. It felt great.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it is. The heat system really has been a miracle. The Trans-Canada Pipeline had some money that they needed to use at the end of their fiscal year in October, and so they gave us $8,000, and Alliant Energy gave us $30,000, and we've been connected to a number of other Iowa things, the Iowa Department of Ag Land Stewardship and the Sustainable Ag Research and Education. And it will be a research facility. We've put thermometers, 15 thermometers all over the place, and that was Jerry that helped me get the thermometer, the onset thing. And so very cool. It'll be interesting to see as soon as we get the thermometers all up, we'll put it right online on our website, and you can go there and see what temperature it is in the greenhouse.
That's awesome. What's the website?
It's Hometown Harvest of Southeast Iowa. And
Hometown Harvest of Southeast Iowa, no spaces.org.
You'll be able to find it. Just type that in. Yeah. It is. There's only one of us. It's okay. It's in there.
That's great. Thanks, Jan.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. All right. Okay, so we are getting ready to introduce our topic for the evening, which is tea. And I think you don't have your guitar with you. I'm talking to Tom Allen. You don't have your guitar with you because why?
This is me and the University of Minnesota Men's Chorus singing a song which I wrote called, I won't tell you what it's called yet, but it's about how innocent a man's intentions always are when he invites a young lady to tea.
Oh.
It's called A Little Less Abstract Is My Desire for You.
All right, well, let's hear it.
This was actually written on a TM course a number of years ago with Marishi, so here we go.
Abstract is my desire for you. There's mischief in my heart as I inquire for you. Out in my backyard I built a pyre for you. Won't you like to come along to tea? I have a friend who lives in Colorado, in the Chinook Valley where the wind blows. When they blow his wife out in the yard, just go and says to them, go, oh God, go. Listen to me, sweetie, as I sing to you. Never would I ever do a thing to you. All I want to do is give a wing to you, to help you get from you to me to you. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle is the song I sing. Sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle goes the rain in spring. Listen to the tinkle sprinkle down on you. Why? Because sweet, I love you.
Tom, you are always surprising. I have to say that. Definitely always surprising. But perfect introduction to tea.
Yes, it was sung for a high school audience up in Minnesota.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was just terrific. I was thinking a lot about tea the other day, and I had this revelation that for me it was quite extraordinary. Actually, I don't know whether anybody else would think it would be extraordinary, but for me it was extraordinary. By the way, you're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and this is 60 Minutes of Delicious Radio. And we're about to talk with Corey Morrow, who is the proprietor of Earth and Water. And Corey, when I was thinking about tea, I started realizing some interesting things about why I love tea so much. It's something that I associate with romance. And when I think about other beverages, the only other beverage that I associate with romance is wine. And so tea and wine end up having this special place in my heart, in my life, because they're things that I get to share with my wife. And she is a total tea lover. She loves tea so much. And wine is something that she could take or leave, but when she has a wine that's absolutely amazing, then she can take it. And so I started thinking about other beverages like, I don't know, soda, whatever, you know.
You don't find soda romantic?
Not particularly. And coffee, because that's a common beverage that many people drink. And I love coffee. I love espresso, really, is what I love. But it doesn't have that association, even though certainly I've had it many, many times with my wife. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but the allure, the romance about it isn't there, where it is with thinking about tea and sitting down together and having this wonderful cup of liquid that has a absolutely wonderful aroma to it, and then, just kind of chatting quietly about some things every morning, and then whether it's at a tea shop in Paris, for example, or at afternoon tea in a fancy hotel somewhere, and just the same with having wine in an amazing setting, for example, at a restaurant. It's a restaurant in Philadelphia, Vetri, that we love to go to, or in Italy at friends' houses. All those things have, so tea and wine have that romance to them, and I think that was really an interesting thing for me, actually.
I can appreciate that for sure. I think there's something about tea that's a little bit slower than some other beverages. Even I don't know about wine. Wine can be slow too, but it's also there's that image of Bacchus or Dionysus, and he's a little bit playful. And tea helps me slow down. There's caffeine in it for sure, but it's kind of meditative. And you were talking about romance. I think of wine and tea as having these picturesque estates. The tea is this fog-shrouded, mountainous green landscape, and there's something. I ask myself this question a lot: what is it about tea? I'm still figuring it out. It's a fun journey.
It is fun, it really is. It really, and it's a journey that's entranced, millions of people over the years, and there have been so many tomes written about tea. About intricacies not only of the tea itself and the preparation of the tea, but the actual service of the tea, everything.
Yeah. The ritual, I think, is part of the romance, too, and I've thought a lot about that, too. People ask me, do you do Japanese tea ceremony? I just look at them with my eyebrows way up high because... no, I mean, that's a beautiful ceremony. It's really something. It's something to watch, but it's incredibly formal. And it's really interesting to see these different cultures' ceremonies from, even though this is a different plant, the North African mint tea, their showmanship from pouring the steel pot from really high into your glass so it froths. And every culture somehow has seemed to gather some important rituals that they feel very attached to around tea, whether it's the highly formal Japanese tea ceremony or the very loose Chinese tea ceremony, which is just the opposite about us as the Chinese. Very, very casual and heartfelt and not formal at all.
What's really interesting is all this has evolved from one plant. There are many different teas, thousands and thousands of different teas, but it's all from the same plant.
There are actually over 7,000 types of green tea, supposedly, in China alone. So it's a big world, just like wine or like coffee. It's kind of fun to think that definitely will never taste all the teas out there in the world. And they're still making new things. Research institutes in tea-growing countries, they're still coming up with new cultivars by breeding one variety with the other and coming up with new flavors. A lot of things are a miss, and then a few things are really a big hit. So it's very cool. Yeah,
it is fascinating, just the amazing amount of diversity, and I guess all that comes from the different terroir that you find for the plant itself, the different growing methods, the different climate as the terroir, and then the processing.
Mm-hmm. All of those things have an influence, like you said. The terroir, the manufacture, which is a funny word for a lot of people to think of, but that just means how it's made after it's harvest. The harvest is another thing. You may do everything else the same, but if you get a certain harvest, generally you're going to be getting either exclusively the bud or the bud, which is at the very end of the stem of the tea plant, and one leaf, or the bud and two leaves, or just a more coarse or lower grade harvest of a few leaves and not many buds at all.
Now, is most of this done by hand still?
It depends on the country. In China, it's almost completely done by hand still. The cost of labor is so cheap. In India, it's both done by hand often, and in the Assam region, they will use machines to harvest the tea. Depends on the grade, but every country still has these techniques in the tea gardens that have been handed down generationally, and things are still done by hand. The best teas are still made by hand.
So give us a little bit about, you've been on the show before, but I think I always feel like we need to kind of start at the beginning, at least for a few minutes. So give us a little bit of background about, how you got into tea and where you are right now in terms of your relationship with this particular wonderful leaf.
It's an ongoing relationship with the leaf, and that's the fun part about it. When people ask me how I got into tea, it started, I would say, probably when a big influence was when I watched this documentary, which I think, are we still going to hear something about that?
We are going to hear about All in This Tea a little bit later on.
Okay. So this fascinating documentary highlighting this man's travels through China, David Lee Hoffman, and, he lived in China for a while, lived in India, and now at this point he's 70 years old. He's been traveling back and forth to China for 40 years and pioneered a sort of means of doing business in China where he wanted to work with individual estates, and that wasn't how business was usually done. The government didn't like to tax things that way, and most factory was sold to, or most tea was sold to factories and then sold either nationally or internationally through the factories, not from the growers themselves.
So you saw the documentary, and then at some point you actually got to meet Mr. Hoffman.
I've actually had the pleasure. I got to see him twice this year. He lives out in Marin County. That was really nice. And he's, if you're ever out on the West Coast, it's well worth taking a little extra time to pop up and see him. He's up in the Lagunitas Hills. It's really beautiful up there. He has a great house. He and his wife are very friendly.
He doesn't mind if you just come and knock on his door. Hey, Corey Morrow told me that it was fine to come on over.
I think you can call ahead of time, at least. But he takes guests on Fridays, every Friday, and he will treat you very nicely. He'll probably cook you a meal, and he's a very good cook too. You could connect with him over. He likes to cook with these Korean stoneware pots. They heat everything evenly. You can put him right on a gas range and everything. He grounds his own flour from local heirloom wheat varieties, ancient wheat varieties, and makes these great breads. And I think we had like a really yummy bacon bread to go with this split pea stew that was really thick and had chunks of ham in it. It was really yummy.
Did you have any tea?
Yeah, the first time I was there, we tasted 21 different teas in an afternoon, and that was a blast. Last time I was there, we tasted, I think, what did we do? That was just a pleasure visit. So we just had a few things. That wasn't so much about business.
Okay, let's talk about this then. There's got to be two different ways of tasting tea, I think. Well, there's got to be lots of different ways. But how about the business way of tasting tea? I mean, I've seen some of the footage of people, it looks like they've tasting 400, 500 teas at a crack. And so let's talk about that way, and then the personal, how to do it in your own home.
Sure. Well, you can taste teas while you're sitting at your computer and sending emails. That's one way to taste teas. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can taste teas deliberately. You can. There's 5 S's. I mean, you can spell words however you like, or you can come up with different words. But you could, you smell the tea. You can also, this is a sidestep, but you can smell the wet leaf. We're going to do that because I think that's a really nice way to do it. And then you slurp the tea to aerate it a little bit, cool it down, pull it into your mouth. It splashes it against the back of your palate. You swish it around in your mouth, get it on the roof, the sides, under the tongue, over the tongue. And then you swallow, and then this word doesn't make as much sense, but we had to keep the 5 S's. So you sigh through your nose.
Smell, slurp, swish, swallow, and sigh.
Sigh through the nose. Yeah, that's right.
I like that. I actually do. But these guys, when I've seen the people that are actually out there searching for teas, I mean, they're going so fast from cup to cup to cup. I don't even understand how anybody can process that information.
That's a really interesting thing. I can't say that I'm on that level yet. When it's your job to taste teas, and these people, probably the people that you're talking about are people that are, they are paid a good amount of money by companies like Unilever or Lipton or what are some other Twinings, common common tea blends that are sold all over the world. They are made, and they're always consistent. You know, you might wonder, how are these blends, which are not necessarily a bad thing. People talk about tea bags being bad and loose tea being good, and there's some truth to that, for sure. But there is a certain amount of credit due to these tasters like you're talking about who have these jobs, and you do see them, they'll sip on something, they'll swish around real fast, and they'll spit it out into a spittoon, and they'll go on to the next one, and they may taste a lot of teas that way. And it's impressive what they do. What they're doing is they're analyzing the different flavors and the mouthfeel and the nose of all these different teas, and they may blend up to 40 or 50 teas from different estates to achieve the overall flavor of the blend that they want.
So that tea bag of black tea that Twinings produces or that Lipton produces always tastes the same.
Yeah, the consistency is extremely important for those brands. It is their entire business model. People want to taste Lipton, and they want to know what to expect. They don't want it to be different the next year around. But I think there's something exciting about getting a new harvest of tea in from a new estate, and just tasting a single estate tea, grown from one garden. It's not going to taste the same all the time, but you're going to find some really interesting flavors in there. You're going to find some subtleties that are exciting.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what we're going to do.
So today, this is the first time that I have orchestrated a more focused tea tasting. Generally, I take people through a sampling of different types of tea, and we explain that all teas come from one plant, the Camellia sinensis plant, and so we taste maybe a green and a white and an oolong and a black, and if you're lucky, and a darker oolong, because there's many types of oolong, and then maybe a pu'er, which is an aged and fermented tea. But today we're just going to taste black teas, and we're going to see what we can find in the differences. We're going to taste 2 Indian black teas and 2 Chinese black teas.
Okay, so now you need a volunteer from the audience?
Sure, I think we can probably muster one up. Or
do we need 1 or 2?
Maybe we can do 2 this time.
We need 2. So we got 2 people that want to come up and try, the teas. I can't believe. Yeah, okay, there's 1, and another person who would like to do it. All right, just somebody come up and join Bob up here, because this is going to be really fascinating, and it's a great opportunity. Obviously, wherever you live, if you're in a town, there's so many tea shops now all over the place, and you can probably go and do this, ask the proprietor, to create the same type of experience for you, right? I'm sure.
You can go, and you can definitely ask for flights. I think if you're going to go to a small tea shop where not a chain, it's nice to ask the purveyor for their specialty, like what have they sort of catered to. At Earth and Water, I have a mixture of pure leaf teas and blends. It's my strategy to kind of cater to the people that know that they really like tea, and to help offer some introductory things to people that don't know if they're really into it, or maybe they like things a little bit sweeter, so we have some blends that maybe have vanilla or this or that, those types of things. But
yeah, I think that's really fascinating, because it goes along with the whole coffee shop trend too, because most people who order coffees in coffee shops, they don't get a straight espresso, for example. They're getting a flavored coffee where the beans are generally over roasted, and so the flavor comes in with the beans, and you can still taste coffee, and doesn't taste over roasted because you've got all that sweet, sickly syrup that's in it. And so teas, it's in the States at least, let's put it that way, because I don't know about in other countries. I think that this is the kind of thing that we, for some reason, the general population seems to be into. So you've got the same thing with teas. You've got all these herbal teas, which I think is a misnomer, because herbal teas are not teas. And matter of fact, the word for tea is different. I know, at least in Italian, an herbal tea is called a tisana. I probably don't pronounce it right, but it's not called tea. And you go into shops like what's the name of that? What's that chain that's
the chain Tiavana was just bought by Starbucks for, I believe, over $1 billion.
Yeah,
maybe multiple billions of dollars. It's hard to remember those numbers when they get that high.
They've got lots of flavored teas. I mean, that's basically what most of the teas that they have there are flavored teas. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'll buy a flavored herbal blend, for example, to make iced tea or something like that. But it's just kind of interesting that you're really talking about, I would say, a pure vision and something that allows somebody to, what we're going to experience, what is somebody really getting an understanding of what the leaf by itself, how it comes into being and creating this flavored beverage as opposed to adding flavors to the leaf.
Right. That's definitely what we're going to do tonight. I go back and forth. I mean, I've definitely started to lean heavily towards just enjoying tea without anything else in it. There's so much to taste there, and between all the different types of tea, between black teas, green teas, oolongs, etc., all the different types of tea, you can cater to different moods, different feelings. If you want maybe a little bit more caffeine, maybe a little bit less. If you want something very light and refreshing and it has maybe some natural fruity notes, it's there. Like it exists in the teas for sure. You can find it. Or you want something that's nice to be next to a fire with, something hearty and rich. I mean, you also can't get that. It's hard to get that in different beverages. Tea is this amazing plant, what people will do with it. And it's so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to taste 4 different black teas. The first one is an Assam from a particular state, and I'm embarrassed. If you look on my website, you'll be able to find the name of the estate, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
But it's in Assam.
It is in the Assam region of India. Yeah.
Okay. So the 2 people who come on up and don't be bashful, give it a shot and see what's happening. I want to remind people that you are listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, solar powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. You can sit down now too, and just stay in the front. That'll make it easier. And this is 60 minutes of delicious radio. We're talking with Corey Morrow, who is the proprietor of Earth and Water, and we're discussing tea. Now, let's talk a little bit while they're experiencing their tea. Do you want to tell them that you guys remember the 5 S's? Okay, so remember the 5 S's when you're doing that. And
Steve is the 6th S.
I'm the 6th S. Yes, that's very good, Tom. Let's talk a little bit about. Most people are familiar with orange pekoe. I mean, I had some. What type of tea did you have? Oh, I had orange pico. But how about straightening that out?
It's crazy. I have customers that will fight me on this point, and they will tell me that I say, well, are you familiar with different types of tea, or what sort of tea do you like? And they'll say, oh, I like orange pico. And I just say, okay. Pico just means the terminal leaf bud. It's a technical term on the plant. Orange refers to the House of Orange in Holland from 1600s, 1700s. History's not my strong suit. This tea was named, this particular blend of black teas with a certain quantity of pekoe, the buds of tea, which gives a certain softness and sweetness to the tea, was named after the House of Orange, and it was sold internationally. It has nothing to do with the flavor of orange, and it is not a type of tea anymore. It is now a gradation of tea. There's orange pico, broken orange pico, golden broken orange pico, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on.
BFOP, broken flowery orange pekoe, GFOP, golden flowery orange pekoe, and then there's Tippy, right? Isn't it TFGOP? Okay, do we need to know about all that stuff?
My opinion is no. You don't need to know about it. Go to a tea purveyor that you trust. Have a conversation with them. That's the leaf grade. That's how broken and how tippy it is. These are the things that it talks about. Whether it's broken or an orthodox tea, which means whole leaf production, and then the gradation of how many buds are there. I don't know. You can pay top dollar to get a tea with a lot of letters in front of it, or you can really look into finding some good tea. That's specifically about Indian teas or African teas. They'll use that British sort of naming scheme.
And there's cut and curl. What is that about?
CTC, crushed terra curl, is what you'll find in your tea bags. It's the really fine, you'll see little pellets, or you'll see very finely cut tea leaf. That's a special method of black tea manufacture. It's Sir Thomas Lipton came, again, history's not my strong suit. I just love the flavor of tea and the ritual of tea. I'm honest about that. I don't lie to people about it. I've always I glaze over that part I glazed over it in school, and I glaze over it in the books that I read about tea. So actually, yeah, before this cools down, we should talk about this flavor of this Assam, and then get on to the other ones, shouldn't we?
We should. It's really, really wonderful. Maybe do we want to ask what people experienced? Maybe we'll talk to a couple of guys. Bob, what did you think as you were doing your 5 S's?
Well, I thought it was good.
That's very good. Man of a few words. Tom, anything to add to that?
I love the smell of it. It's incredible. But actually, I liked it even better than the flavor of it. And it's astringent. It has a nice astringent quality to it.
Yeah, it does have a nice astringent.
Smooth. It's
all right.
We'll find out which.
What?
Estate,
No, we don't know what estate. Or do you know this one?
You'll have to go online. It's really my trick. You'll just have to visit earthwatertea.com and then look up our Assam Gold.
So, what is it that you would like people to not only just hear, but as people are trying tea, wherever they happen to be doing it, even if it's at their own breakfast table, what is it that you'd like people to look for?
I'd say be simple with the experience. Don't try and look like a snob that you see on TV. Just go through the process with yourself. Don't shortchange yourself. Smell, slurp, swish, swallow, and sigh through your nose. And see what you find. You may be one of those people that has 15 different descriptive words, and you're going to say it tastes like dark chocolate, and then when I exhaled it, I got a little notes of raisin, but then 70% of the way through the taste, before I swallowed it was like fig, and you may be one of those people.
I'm like Bob. It's good.
You may not be one of those people, and you might say, oh yeah, it's good, or that's dark, or that's you might say, I don't get it. Not every tea's for you, so don't just assume that because you're drinking it, you're supposed to have something to say about it.
I really like that. That's really good because I think sometimes people feel like if you're introduced to something like a really high quality tea, that they have to like it.
Yeah, I would discourage that. People feel alienated, and it's tough. Some people come into the tea shop and they'll see this wall of tea. Oh, that's really good. It's just, it just hit me, and now I'm feeling pretty happy about drinking that tea. People come in, they can be overwhelmed with all the different flavors and not flavors types of tea. And you'll get somebody that just goes, I don't know, my grandma made tea, and I thought it was pretty good. And
I think that while we get the next tea going, I think I'm going to ask Beverly Merson to come up and tell us a little bit about All in This Tea so that people can hear a little bit more about the gentleman who you have had the pleasure of. Philip David Hoffman, is that his name?
No, that sounds like Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's a famous actor. This is
wow. What's his name? What's the guy's name with the tea?
This is David Lee Hoffman.
David Lee Hoffman. Don't complicate things. He's got a simple name. It's excellent. And the documentary is called All in This Tea, and anybody can find it probably anywhere. Beverly Merson, come on up here. Come on.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so it's called All in This Tea, and you could find, when I first watched the film, I was able to stream it. I guess David Lee Hoffman made a contract for a certain amount of time. Now you have to get a DVD, but you could rent it from Amazon.com and stream it for $1.99. So you can do that as well. I like to know all my options. And this film, I'm really envious of you, Corey, that you met David Lee Hoffman, because watching the film, this is for anybody who has the slightest interest in tea, because he takes you to China. You go to China with David Lee Hoffman, and he takes you to the farmers, and he shows you how they pick the tea, how they roast the tea, how they massage the tea, and they get it into...
Not like kale, I hope.
That's right, not like kale. It's a little bit different. This one fellow, he was massaging the tea with his feet, and I couldn't imagine Emily massaging kale.
That's actually the rolling process, particularly for oolongs. They will put it in like a thicker sort of cloth, and they'll use one foot and two hands in this cloth, and they'll roll the leaves tightly together into a little ball.
It's totally fascinating. And not only that, you also learn about a little bit about the history of China. You see the culture of China. You see different people drinking China. You see David Lee Hoffman doing business in China, which is very realistic and definitely an experience just to watch. You see all the wonderful Chinese food that he's eating when he's doing the business. And, there's some really interesting things that he brings up in his film. One of the things that I thought fascinating, he's very into sustainability, into organic in his film. And this is what he's trying to bring back with the tea that he's importing, to get all the farmers into it rather than the industrial way of doing it. And he talks about the earthworm, and he says that Darwin, his last book that Charles Darwin wrote was about the earthworm and how important the earthworm is to civilization and, of course, to sustainability, and, digs into the earth. Another thing that he shows when he takes you through the different tea plants, he was saying how, first of all, he shows you some of these tea plants that are about 700, 800 years old, and their roots extend like 25 feet into the earth. And he's saying that how all this is really important for the chemistry of the earth. And he said, that's what picks up the different tastes in the tea. He says, as a matter of fact, there's some teas that will pick up the taste from the orchids around the tea plant, which is absolutely fascinating. So I'm just going to look at some of my notes. Basically, the movie is a must-see because the music is beautiful. And when you see those tea terraces, I've been to China, and I remember driving through China and seeing the terraces, the tea terraces, and thinking, God, these are some of the most beautiful landscapes that I've ever seen. So it shows you a little bit of the history of tea. It shows you it really brings you to the tea masters at their work, the culture of China, and the best lesson that I think I've ever had about tea.
One of the things that I found fascinating was he would taste these teas and he would go, oh, chemicals,
Yes.
That was like wild.
He could smell it, and he'd say chemicals, and he'd push the bags away. So people really saw. He knew right away, and he's very cute because he sets up this. There's this Himalayan fair in Berkeley. You might know about it, and he has tea there, and he says, and he's very humble actually. Did you find that, Corey? That is
very much. He's hanging out with David is a hoot. He loves tea, but he's just like Bob. He just goes, that's good. That's what he says.
Bob, you're in good company. That's great.
And at this Himalayan tea fair, you see David Lee Hoffman sitting around with people, and he says, I think after 20 years, I think I've learned how to make a good cup of tea. So anyways, the movie's really fascinating, and I recommend it highly. And you'll want to run out and just go to Corey's Earth and Water and enjoy some tea there.
Beverly, thank you. Beverly Merson, Cinnabites, All in This Tea, the documentary. Let me remind everybody that on December 11th, Great Taste will be live at Hy-Vee, and you'll have the pleasure of meeting Chef Julia Punj, who's going to be working with oysters, and Danielle George will be here teaching us how to make a simple Yule log, and Brandon Neal will be making his famous sour cream old-fashioned donuts. That is going to be exciting. And if you want to read about America's 25 best donut shops, you can find that information at thedailymeal.com. A couple other things that I want to cover really quickly here, and those are, December 18th. I forgot to tell you about that. December 18th is our last live show until the end of January, and that show, December 18th, will be the Indian Hills Culinary Arts students doing holiday treats. So it's going to be a lot of fun and should be absolutely delicious. All right, so back to tea.
All right, this next tea that we're going to taste is also from India. The first tea that we tasted was from India. That was in the lowland. It's very, I'll say one thing in particular about the last tea that we tasted. I think, did everybody that tasted it was pretty full-bodied. Yeah. Somebody said astringent. Some people say tannic, like they describe a red wine. That's okay, we'll deal with that later, Tom. This next tea that we're going to taste is actually from a different variety. The first tea was from the Assamica variety of the tea plant. So you'll see in the biological classification of the different plants, there's Camellia sinensis, variation sinensis, which is called the China bush colloquially, and then there's variation Assamica, which is called the India bush. And both these bushes were actually natively grown in those regions. The Assam bush was grown in Assam, India, and when the Brits were occupying, and this is some history I do know, when the Brits were occupying India, they had already become highly addicted to tea, and they wanted to grow good tea in India. It would be cheaper for them. They wouldn't have to trade with the Chinese who were trading with the Dutch. They didn't want to compete. And they started looking at ways to plant the China bush in the Indian climate. It didn't really take that well. After a while, they discovered that this other bush that they had already found there was the same plant. It's a different variety of the same plant. It looks a lot hardier and bigger. But so now 95% of the tea that comes out of India is from the Assam region. That's the first one we tasted. Now we're going to taste a tea from Darjeeling, which is much higher elevation, and this is from the China bush.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so that should be actually really fascinating to see the differences. Okay, so let's let everybody who's doing it get their 5 S's going with this Darjeeling tea, and while they're doing that, I want to mention just a couple of things because we're running actually out of time here. But we're going to continue our tasting afterwards. So if there's anything that you really want to mention before we're off air, please do.
Can I mention sales on Crew? Can I mention
I think you already did. I think you just did.
So we have a sale going on all December long at Earth and Water, which is spend $20 on pottery, like for gift items for any of your family members or for yourself as a not-so-guilty pleasure, and we're going to give you 20% off your whole order of tea up to $200. So this is a good time to gift others with both nice things, gifts that keep on giving, the tea and the pottery.
All right. Now, if you want to learn about tea in terms of having an opportunity to really get into it, is there some reference that you can utilize, something that you can give some input to our listeners as to how they can go about doing that?
A couple things, yeah. You can go on my website. I have a tea tasting blog that I've logged over 160 different tastings of different types of tea. You can learn some things that way. That's on our website, earthwatertea.com.
Earthwatertea.com.
Mm-hmm. There's also a little bit of information on there, and I'm adding more and more there regularly. If you're looking for a fantastic book for yourself or a loved one over the holidays, I recommend the Hess's book, The Story of Tea. I think it strikes a really nice balance. It's very engaging all across the board. It's just it's good for somebody getting into tea, and it's also good for people that already have a passion for it.
Fantastic. Corey Morrow, I want to thank you very much for being with us. Corey Morrow of Earth and Water, and giving us a little bit of a tutorial. And luckily, those people in the audience can stick around and enjoy more tea. And for those of you who are listening, I want to thank you very much for listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and you have just been listening to 60 Minutes of Delicious Radio.
Great Taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.